Chief Research Officer Thax-9 stared at the obsidian cube floating in the containment field, its surface unmarked by the 3 solar cycles of intensive scanning they had subjected it to. The artifact hummed with a frequency that made his secondary heart skip beats. A sound that somehow felt predatory. "Status report, Krell," Thax commanded, his 4 eyes never leaving the mysterious object. Laboratory technician Krell 7's tentacles danced across the holographic interface, pulling up streams of data that made no sense whatsoever. "Sir, the energy readings are still fluctuating between dormant and, well, frankly impossible. The quantum resonance patterns suggest this thing is scanning us back." The sex's mandibles clicked in annoyance. 3 years since the great human extinction, and their artifacts still mocked superior Zelthak intelligence. The irony was not lost on him that the species they had deemed primitive enough to wipe out had left behind technology that his people's greatest minds could not crack. "Impossible? We obliterated their entire civilization in 6 months, Krellud. How impossible could their toys be?" Senior analyst Sierra 4 spoke up from her workstation, her voice carrying that particular tone of academic smugness that Thax despised. "Sir, perhaps we should consider that we may have underestimated them. The energy signatures coming from this cube match no known power source in our databases, not Zelthak, not Korthan, not even the ancient Vex artifacts." Nonsense. The Thex's primary arms crossed while his secondary ones gestured dismissively. Humans were barely capable of interstellar travel. They had no unified government, spent more time fighting each other than advancing their technology, and died screaming when we introduced them to real warfare. This cube is probably just some primitive computer or storage device. Vox 12, the facility's military advisor, stepped forward with the measured gait of someone who had seen too many battles. His scarred carapace bore testament to campaigns across 17 systems. "Chief Thax, with respect, that primitive computer has been analyzing our security protocols for 72 hours straight. Our best encryption was bypassed in minutes. The quantum locks we installed, gone. The biometric scanners, it is learning our genetic patterns." The laboratory fell silent except for the cube's increasingly ominous humming. Thax felt a chill run down his exoskeleton. "What do you mean? Learning?" The Vox's combat-hardened features tightened. "I mean this thing has been mapping our base layout, cataloging our weapons systems, and somehow accessing classified military data that should be impossible to breach. Sir, I recommend immediate termination protocols." "Absolutely not," Zira interjected, her scientific enthusiasm overriding common sense. "Do you have any idea what kind of breakthrough this represents? We could learn advanced human technology, maybe even reverse engineer their lost sciences." Kralla's tentacles froze over his interface. Chief?" The cube's energy readings just spiked. Massively. The humming grew louder, deeper, until it felt like it was coming from inside their bones. Thax approached the containment field, studying the artifact with growing unease. "Kralla, run a deep scan. I want to know what we are dealing with." "Already tried, sir. The scanners cannot penetrate the surface. It is like the cube exists in multiple dimensions simultaneously. That makes no scientific sense." "Tell that to the cube, sir." The artifact suddenly shifted, its obsidian surface rippling like liquid metal. Symbols began appearing across its faces, burning with red light that hurt to look at directly. The symbols were not random. They formed patterns, sequences, almost like— "By the great spawning pools," Zira whispered. "Those are not decorative markings. They are tactical displays." Thax squinted at the glowing symbols. Tactical displays of what? Before anyone could answer, the cube projected a holographic map of their research facility. Every corridor, every room, every ventilation shaft was displayed in perfect detail. Red dots marked the location of every Zelthak in the building. "How is that possible?" Krall stammered. "Our facility plans are classified beyond top secret." Vox was already reaching for his weapon. "Chief, we need to evacuate. Now." The cube pulsed once, and the holographic display changed. Now it showed not just their facility, but the entire military complex surrounding it. Weapon emplacements, shield generators, the positions of the orbital defense platforms. Everything was mapped with surgical precision. But worse than the tactical analysis was what appeared next. A human face materialized above the cube, projected in ghostly blue light. The face was angular, scarred, with eyes that held the weight of countless battles. When it spoke, its voice carried an accent that sounded like grinding metal. "Greetings, you genocidal morons." The entire laboratory staff froze. Vix felt his blood turn to ice. The human's image continued with what could only be described as a predatory smile. "My name is Colonel Marcus Steele, formerly of the Terran Defense Corps, currently residing in whatever passes for your worst nightmare. You have just activated the Crimson Protocol." Zira's voice came out as a strangled whisper. "That is impossible. All humans are dead. We made sure of it." The projection laughed, a sound like broken glass. "Oh, sweetheart, you have no idea what you have done, do you? See, the thing about humans is that we are really good at holding grudges. And when someone commits genocide against our entire species, well, we tend to take that personally." Fox had his weapon drawn, though what good it would do against a hologram was unclear. "This is some kind of recording. A programmed response." "Actually, no." The human's expression shifted to something far more dangerous. "I am what you might call a digital consciousness. We saw your invasion coming months before you arrived. Did you really think a species that spent 10,000 years perfecting the art of war would go down without contingency plans?" Vix felt his world tilting. "Contingency plans? Oh yes. You see, while you were busy glassing our worlds and patting yourselves on the back for your tactical brilliance, we were uploading our best military minds into quantum storage matrices. Every strategy, every battle plan, every hard-learned lesson from humanity's bloodiest conflicts, all preserved in artifacts like this one." The cube's surface began to shift more rapidly, symbols flowing like digital rivers of fire. Marcus continued, his smile growing wider. "And now, thanks to your curiosity, you have given us access to your networks, your military databases, your entire command structure. We know everything about you, your weaknesses, your fears, your precious little civilization." Crilly was frantically trying to shut down the containment field, but his controls were no longer responding. "Chief, the system is locked out. I cannot terminate the interface." "The beautiful irony," Marcus said, his image flickering with malicious joy, "is that you did this to yourselves. You could have left our artifacts alone, could have been content with your genocide. But no, you had to poke the sleeping dragon." Vox stepped closer to the cube, his weapon trained on the projection. "What do you want?" "Want?" Marcus threw back his head and laughed. "My friend, what I want is already in motion. You see, this cube is not just a storage device. It is a beacon. And right about now, every other Crimson Protocol artifact scattered across this galaxy is receiving a very interesting signal." The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Vix's voice cracked. "What kind of signal?" "The kind that says, 'Target acquired. Begin Phase 2. As if summoned by his words, alarms began blaring throughout the facility. Emergency lights bathed everything in hellish red, and the communications array crackled to life with panicked reports from across the system. "Chief Thex." The voice of Fleet Commander Gex Prime burst through the speakers. "We are detecting massive energy buildups from 17 different locations across the sector. Unknown technology activating simultaneously." Marcus nodded approvingly. 17 artifacts, 17 strategic positions. "We chose our landing sites very carefully during the war. You know, always thinking 3 steps ahead." Zira was backing away from the cube, her scientific enthusiasm finally giving way to genuine terror. "This cannot be happening. You are extinct. We made sure." "Extinct?" Marcus shook his head. "Lady, you have a lot to learn about humans. We do not go extinct. We evolve. We adapt. And most importantly, we remember." The facility shook as something massive moved in the depths below. Dust rained from the ceiling, and the lights flickered ominously. Vox was shouting into his communicator. "Security teams to Laboratory 7. Lock down all levels. Initiate containment protocols." "Oh, Vox." Marcus said, somehow knowing the military advisor's name. "Your containment protocols are adorable, but you are thinking too small. This is not about containing us anymore. This is about what we are going to do to you." Another tremor, stronger this time. Something was definitely moving in the lower levels, something big enough to shake a facility built to withstand orbital bombardment. Thick stumbled as the floor bucked beneath him. "What have you awakened down there?" Marcus's expression became truly terrifying. "Not awakened, my six-eyed friend. Built. You see, those energy readings your instruments have been picking up? That was not just the cube analyzing your defenses. It was manufacturing." "Manufacturing what?" Krill whispered. "War machines. Specifically, the kind of war machines that a species with 10,000 years of continuous warfare experience dreams up when they have unlimited time and resources to prepare for revenge." The alarms grew louder, more urgent. Reports flooded in from across the facility. Structural failures, unknown energy signatures, and most disturbing of all, sightings of something moving in the shadows of the lower levels. Marcus leaned forward in his projection, his eyes gleaming with anticipation. "Tell me, Chief Thex, did your intelligence reports mention anything about human creativity when it comes to inflicting pain?" Thex could not find his voice. "No? Well, you are about to get a master class. See, we had months to plan for this moment. Months to think about what we would do to the species that murdered our children, destroyed our worlds, ended our civilization. And humans, when properly motivated, can be quite inventive." A new sound reached them from the depths, something like massive mechanical breathing, accompanied by the scrape of metal on stone. Vox was frantically coordinating evacuation procedures, but his voice carried a note of desperation. "All personnel to emergency stations. This is not a drill. Unknown hostile entities detected in sublevels." Marcus chuckled. "Hostile? That hurts, Vox. We prefer to think of ourselves as justice incarnate." Zira's scientific instruments were going haywire, displaying readings that should have been impossible. "The energy output is exceeding theoretical maximums. Whatever is down there, it is drawing power from sources we cannot even detect." "Quantum tap," Marcus explained helpfully. "We learned to harness zero-point energy during the war. Infinite power for our infinite patience." Nix finally found his voice, though it came out as a croak. "What do you want from us?" The projection's smile faded, replaced by something cold and implacable. "What do we want? We want you to understand what it feels like to be helpless. We want you to know the fear our children felt when your ships appeared in our skies. We want you to experience the despair of watching everything you love burn." The facility shook again, and this time they could hear something approaching through the corridor. Heavy footsteps that rang like funeral bells. "But most of all," Marcus continued, his voice dropping to a whisper that somehow carried more menace than any shout, "we want you to realize that you have awakened something that should have stayed buried. You have unsealed not just an artifact, but a promise that humanity made to itself in its final moments." "What promise?" This whispered. Marcus's image began to fade as the cube's energy redirected itself to more immediate concerns, but his final words echoed through the laboratory with terrible finality, that even in death we would have our revenge. "Welcome to the Crimson Protocol, you genocidal fools. Phase 2 is just beginning." The projection vanished, leaving only the cube's angry red glow and the sound of something vast and hungry climbing up from the depths below, ready to introduce the Zelthak to the true meaning of human warfare. The laboratory's blast doors suddenly slammed shut with a finality that made everyone jump. Emergency lighting cast everything in hellish red shadows, and the air recycling system began working overtime to clear the acrid smell of ozone and burning circuits. "Sir," Krella's voice cracked as he stared at his instruments, "the containment field around the cube is not keeping it in anymore. It is keeping us in." Nick spun around to verify what his subordinate was saying, and his blood ran cold. The energy field that had once imprisoned the artifact was now projected outward, sealing the entire laboratory. They were trapped with whatever the humans had unleashed. Vox was pounding on his communicator, his usual military composure cracking. "Command? This is Military Advisor Vox 12. We have a code black situation in Laboratory 7. Requesting immediate extraction. Static answered him. Command, respond. This is a priority alpha emergency. More static than a voice that definitely was not Zelthak command. It was human, female, with an accent that suggested military training and considerable amusement. Sorry, big guy, but your command structure is currently experiencing technical difficulties. This is Captain Elena Vasquez, Terran Psychological Warfare Division. We have assumed control of your communications array. Zira's instruments were painting an increasingly terrifying picture. Chief, the quantum resonance patterns are spreading. Whatever manufacturing process was initiated, it is not limited to this facility. I am detecting similar signatures at 17 other locations across the sector. The footsteps in the corridor were getting closer, accompanied now by a sound that made their exoskeletons itch, something like a massive heartbeat, but made of metal and fury. Captain Vasquez's voice continued over the speakers, conversational and utterly terrifying. You know, we spent a lot of time studying your species during the war, your psychology, your weaknesses, your adorable belief that superior firepower equals superior strategy. Turns out you have some fascinating phobias. Dex found himself backing toward the far wall, though there was nowhere to run. What are you talking about? Oh, come now, do not be modest. The fear of confined spaces. For instance, your species evolved in vast underground cavern systems. Right? All that lovely open space, being trapped must be absolutely hellish for you. As if on cue, the walls began to feel closer, more oppressive. It was probably psychological, but Thax could swear the room was actually shrinking. Then there is your fascinating relationship with the dark. Those pretty light-sensitive eyes of yours, adapted for your homeworld's triple-star system. I bet you have never experienced true darkness before, have you? The lights began to dim. Kracian was hyperventilating, his tentacles flailing wildly. This is psychological torture. You are violating 17 different interstellar conventions. Captain Vasquez laughed. A sound like silver bells dipped in poison. Conventions? Oh, honey, you genocided our entire species. The rule book went out the airlock the moment you decided to glass our worlds. Vox had his weapon ready, though what he expected to shoot remained unclear. What is your objective here? What do you hope to accomplish? Accomplish? The human's voice turned thoughtful. Well, short term, we want to see how long it takes superior Zelthak intellect to break down under pressure. Medium term, we want to field test some new toys we have been working on. Long term, the darkness deepened, and the footsteps were now just outside the laboratory doors. Long term, we want to teach the galaxy what happens when you mess with humanity. Something massive struck the blast doors from the outside. The reinforced metal rated to withstand ship-grade weapons buckled inward like paper. Through the gap they could see something that defied description. It was vaguely humanoid but wrong in every conceivable way. 8 feet tall, covered in what looked like living metal that shifted and flowed like liquid mercury. Its eyes were points of burning red light, and when it moved, servos whined and pistons hissed. But worst of all was its face, unmistakably human features cast in chrome and hatred. Allow me to introduce War Machine 7, Captain Vasquez said with evident pride. We call him Jake. He used to be a kindergarten teacher from Ohio. Now he is 600 pounds of weaponized vengeance with a really, really bad attitude about child killers. Jake the War Machine tore through the blast doors like they were made of tissue paper. His head swiveled to focus on the trapped Zelthak, and when he spoke, his voice was like grinding gears wrapped around barely controlled rage. Which one of you bug-eyed morons authorized the orbital bombardment of New Geneva Elementary School? Thux's mandibles clicked uncontrollably. That was a strategic target. There were military installations nearby. Jake's optical sensors flared brighter. Strategic target. You murdered 3,000 children because there was a radar station 2 miles away? The War Machine took a step forward and the floor plates buckled under his weight. His right arm began to unfold, revealing weapon systems that belonged in a fever dream. Please, Zira whispered. We were following orders. We are scientists, not soldiers. Following orders. Jake's voice dropped to a whisper that somehow carried more menace than any roar. You know who else followed orders, lady? The guards at the concentration camps. The pilots who dropped the bombs. The soldiers who lined up the children. Another step forward. The Zelthak huddled together against the far wall like prey animals, which, Thex realized with dawning horror, was exactly what they had become. Captain Vasquez's voice cut through their terror. Now, do not worry too much. Jake is not going to kill you. That would be too easy. Too quick. We have something much more educational in mind. Kreddle found his voice. What? What do you want us to do? Oh, you do not get to do anything, the human replied cheerfully. You get to watch. You see those 17 other facilities where we placed our artifacts. They are all activating right now. And the really beautiful part is that your own government is about to make the same mistake you did. The cube pulsed, and suddenly the air filled with holographic displays showing Zelthak military installations across the sector. In each one, teams of researchers and military personnel were examining similar obsidian cubes, poking and prodding and scanning just as Thex's team had done. No, Thex breathed. You have to warn them. Warn them about what? Captain Vasquez asked innocently. That their curiosity is about to get them killed, that they are about to unleash the concentrated fury of a dead civilization. Josh, that would spoil the surprise. Jake had reached them now. His massive form looming over the cowering Zelthak, his left hand extended, and instead of weapons it projected a holographic display showing the surface of Earth during the invasion. Cities burning. Evacuation ships being shot down. Civilians running in panic as Zelthak fighters strafed refugee columns. This is what you did to us, Jake said quietly. This is what you called victory. The images shifted, showing more scenes of devastation. Hospitals bombed, schools targeted, children separated from their parents in the chaos, crying for help that would never come. Vox tried to maintain some semblance of dignity. It was war. Casualties were inevitable. Jake's head tilted slightly, a gesture that somehow conveyed infinite contempt. Casualties. You specifically targeted civilian populations. Your own tactical reports called it demoralization through terror. You were not trying to win a war. You were trying to break our spirit. More images flashed by. Mass graves, burning forests, entire continents rendered uninhabitable by sustained bombardment. The funny thing is, Captain Vasquez chimed in, it almost worked. We were beaten, broken, ready to surrender. But then someone in our high command had a brilliant idea. If we were going to die anyway, why not make sure we took you with us? The holographic displays changed, now showing the frantic final months of human civilization. But instead of despair, the images showed something else entirely. Determination, preparation, and a cold, calculating fury that made the Zelthak's blood freeze. Underground bunkers filled with scientists working around the clock. Military commanders uploading their consciousness into quantum matrices, factories producing artifacts like the one humming malevolently in the center of the laboratory. We called it the Crimson Protocol, Captain Vasquez explained. The idea was simple. If humanity dies, we make sure the murderers pay for it. Every strategic mind, every tactical genius, every warrior who ever drew breath was encoded into these little cubes and scattered across the galaxy. Zira was staring at the displays in scientific horror. The energy requirements alone should have been impossible. How did you power such a massive undertaking while under siege? Oh, that is the beautiful part, Jake replied. You gave us the power. Every shot your ships fired, every bomb you dropped, every city you burned. We had quantum collectors siphoning off the energy and feeding it into the protocol network. You literally powered your own destruction. The cube pulsed again, and new holographic displays appeared, showing real-time feeds from the other 17 facilities. In each one, research teams were making the same discoveries, having the same conversations, experiencing the same growing horror as they realized what they had unleashed. And in each facility, war machines were beginning to emerge from the depths. Some looked like Jake, humanoid but wrong, built for destruction and suffering. Others were more abstract, floating spheres of weaponized hatred, insectoid nightmares, with too many limbs and not enough mercy. geometric impossibilities that hurt to look at directly. But all of them shared one common feature: the unmistakable mark of human ingenuity applied to the problem of revenge. 17 facilities, Captain Vasquez mused. 17 chances for your people to make the smart choice and leave our toys alone, and what do you know, every single one of them made the same mistake you did. It is almost like your species is genetically predisposed to stupidity. Effects found his voice, though it came out as barely more than a whisper. How many of you are there? In the protocol network? Oh, about 50,000 of our best and brightest, military commanders, weapons designers, psychologists, strategists, anyone who might be useful for the task of making your species pay for what they did. The war machine. Jake leaned down, bringing his glowing optical sensors level with Thex's terrified face. And we have had 3 years to plan. 3 years to study your weaknesses, map your infrastructure, identify your key personnel. 3 years to design the perfect punishment for genocidal monsters. The facility shook again as more war machines emerged from the depths. Through the gaping hole where the blast doors used to be, they could see shapes moving in the corridors, angular nightmares of metal and malice, each one a testament to human creativity applied to the problem of inflicting maximum suffering. Captain Vasquez's voice took on a tone of mock concern. Oh, and before I forget, we took the liberty of disabling your facility's self-destruct system. We know how you military types love your dramatic exits, but no, you get to stay right here and watch what happens next. What happens next? Krell whispered. Jake straightened up, his massive form casting shadows that seemed to move independently in the dim light. What happens next is that we introduce your civilization to the concept of proportional response. You killed billions of humans. So we are going to kill billions of Zelthak. You destroyed our worlds. So we are going to destroy yours. You committed genocide. His optical sensors flared to maximum brightness. So we are going to return the favor. The cube pulsed one final time. And suddenly the laboratory was filled with the sound of machinery coming online, not just in their facility, but in all 17 locations simultaneously. The Crimson Protocol was fully active now, and 50,000 human minds bent on revenge were about to remind the galaxy why their species had survived 10,000 years of continuous warfare. Vex closed his eyes and tried to pray to whatever gods might still be listening. He had a feeling they were going to need all the help they could get. The galaxy had exactly 14 minutes to realize it was doomed. Fleet Commander Gex Prime was enjoying his morning nutrients when the first reports started flooding in. Routine artifact analysis had turned into a sector-wide emergency faster than his tactical computers could process the data. 17 facilities. 17 simultaneous breaches. 17 identical reports of impossible human technology coming online. Sir, Communications Officer Lex 2 burst into the command center, her normally pristine uniform disheveled and her secondary arms trembling. We are receiving priority distress signals from Research Installation Omega-7. They report hostile entities, massive energy buildups, and complete communication breakdown with Laboratory 7. Gus's primary eyes focused on the tactical display, while his secondary pair scanned the incoming data streams. What he saw made his digestive system clench in ways that evolution had never intended. Hostile entities. The humans are extinct, Officer Lex. What kind of entities are we talking about? Before she could answer, the main view screen flickered to life, showing a feed from Installation Omega-7's security cameras. Gex watched in mounting horror as something that looked like a metallic spider the size of a shuttle tore through a reinforced bulkhead like it was made of paper. The creature moved with fluid grace, its 8 limbs ending in tools that shifted between cutting implements and weapon systems. By the great spawning, Gex whispered. What in the void is that thing? The spider creature turned toward the camera, and Gex felt his soul shrivel as he realized it had a human face embedded in its central mass. The face was female, young, with eyes that held the accumulated rage of a dead civilization. When it spoke, its voice carried the accent of someone who had spent her life teaching children. Hello there, Fleet Commander Gex Prime. My name is Sarah Martinez. I used to run a daycare center on New Tokyo. Your pilots murdered 47 babies under my care. The creature's limbs began unfolding weapon systems that belonged in a fever dream. "I have been looking forward to meeting you." The transmission cut to static. X's command staff stood frozen, staring at screens that showed similar scenes playing out across 17 installations. Spider creatures, floating spheres of weaponized hatred, humanoid war machines, and things that defied description, were emerging from the depths of every facility that had dared to examine human artifacts. "Sir," Tactical Officer Reg 5 stammered, "the energy readings from those installations are off the charts. Whatever those things are, they are drawing power from sources our instruments cannot even identify." "How is that possible?" Gex demanded. "Our intelligence reports indicated that human technology was generations behind ours." Operations Officer Max 8 brought up a holographic display that made everyone in the room take a step backward. "Sir, based on preliminary analysis, these entities appear to be constructed from materials that should not exist. Self-repairing smart metals, quantum processors, energy sources that tap directly into vacuum fluctuations. This is not technology, this is applied physics that our scientists say is impossible." Hicks felt the room spinning around him. "You are telling me that the primitive species we exterminated 3 years ago somehow developed impossible technology?" "Not developed, sir," Max replied grimly. "Hidden. Our analysis suggests these facilities have been manufacturing these entities for months, possibly years. The energy signatures indicate construction began almost immediately after our invasion concluded." "But how?" "We had monitoring stations, patrol fleets, reconnaissance drones covering every system." Communications Officer Lex was frantically trying to establish contact with the affected installations. "Sir, Installation Omega-7 has gone completely dark. So have installations Beta-3, Gamma-12 and Delta-9. The others are reporting massive structural damage and—" She paused, her voice cracking. "Sir, they are reporting that the entities are not trying to escape. They are hunting." "Hunting what?" Sir. They are specifically targeting Zelthak personnel. Our scanners, our weapons, our security systems, none of them are registering these creatures as threats. It is like they are invisible to our technology." Gex's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of extreme stress. "How many casualties?" "Preliminary reports suggest," Lex swallowed hard, "total facility loss at 7 installations. Partial evacuations successful at 3 more. The others are still fighting." The main view screen flickered again, this time showing a feed from installation Gamma-12. A floating sphere approximately the size of a fighter craft was methodically hunting Zelthak personnel through the corridors. The sphere moved with predatory intelligence, using what appeared to be gravity manipulation to pin its targets while extending appendages that looked suspiciously like surgical instruments. A human voice emanated from the sphere, calm and clinical. "Subject designation Zelthak 479. Military rank Captain. Participated in the bombardment of Civilian Shelter Complex 7 on New Mars. Estimated civilian casualties from your actions, 2,347 beings." The trapped Zelthak captain was struggling against the gravity field. His weapon useless against an enemy his targeting systems could not lock onto. "Please," the captain gasped. "I was following orders. The shelter was harboring insurgents." "Incorrect," the sphere replied with mechanical precision. "Intelligence reports confirm that Civilian Shelter Complex 7 carried no military assets. Your targeting data specifically identified it as a refuge for non-combatants. You chose to fire anyway." The sphere extended more appendages, each one equipped with tools that made Gex's blood run cold. "Your psychological profile indicates a high probability of genuine remorse. This is encouraging. However, your actions resulted in the deaths of children. This requires appropriate punishment." "What kind of punishment?" the captain whispered. "The kind that ensures you understand exactly what those children experienced in their final moments." The transmission cut out. The Skeggs turned away from the screen, his digestive system finally giving up the fight. "Officer Lex, get me Supreme Command. Priority Alpha 1. We need immediate military intervention." "Sir, I have been trying for the past 10 minutes. All long-range communications are being jammed by unknown energy signatures." It appears the human entities have taken control of our communication networks. Tactical Officer Rez was staring at his instruments in disbelief. Sir, the jamming is not random. They are selectively blocking military frequencies while leaving civilian channels open. It is like they want the general population to know what is happening. Why would they want that? Before anyone could answer, every screen in the command center suddenly displayed the same image. A human face, male, middle-aged, with the kind of scars that spoke of frontline combat experience. When he spoke, his voice carried an authority that made Gex's exoskeleton itch. Greetings, Fleet Commander Gex Prime. I am General William Hayes, formerly of the Terran Strategic Command, currently serving as coordinator for Operation Crimson Dawn. I understand you are having some difficulties with your research installations. Gex found his voice, though it came out as more of a croak. What do you want? Want? General Hayes smiled, an expression that somehow conveyed more menace than any snarl. Commander, what we want is already in motion. Phase 2 of the Crimson Protocol is proceeding exactly as planned. Phase 2? Oh yes, you have only seen the opening act. Those war machines hunting your people through your installations? They are just the scouts. The real show starts when our manufacturing facilities reach full production capacity. Gex's primary heart stopped beating. Manufacturing facilities? Did you think those 17 installations were accidents? Commander, we have been building factories underneath your most secure research centers for 3 years. Every time one of your scientists scanned our artifacts, they provided us with detailed schematics of your facilities. Every time your security forces ran their patrols, they mapped out your defenses for us. The tactical display updated, showing cross-sections of all 17 installations. Beneath each facility, vast underground complexes were revealed, manufacturing centers that dwarfed the surface installations. By the great spawning, Operations Officer Max breathed. The energy readings from those underground facilities, sir, they are using more power than our entire fleet combined. General Hayes nodded approvingly. Quantum foundries, nanoassemblers, matter compilers, we had 3 years to build the infrastructure for perfect revenge. Every day you thought you were in control, we were down there in the dark, building the tools that would end your civilization. This is impossible, Gex protested. Our sensors would have detected such massive construction projects. Your sensors detected exactly what we wanted them to detect, Hayes replied. Human stealth technology was always several generations ahead of yours. The only reason you won the war was superior numbers and our unfortunate tendency toward planetary loyalties instead of species-wide cooperation. Communications Officer Lex was frantically trying to establish contact with their fleet assets. Sir, our patrol ships are reporting similar energy signatures at mining operations, orbital stations, even some civilian installations. Whatever the humans built, it was not limited to military research facilities. Keyes leaned forward, his expression becoming deadly serious. Officer Lex is correct. See, we had a lot of time to think during those final months of the war, and we realized something important. Your species shares a critical weakness with ours. What weakness? Curiosity. You cannot resist poking things you do not understand. So we made sure our artifacts ended up everywhere. Research stations, universities, museums, private collections. Anywhere a Zelthak might find something interesting and decide to take a closer look. The command center's lights began to flicker, and Gex felt a familiar chill as he realized what was happening. You put artifacts on this station, did not you? Hayes's smile widened. 3 of them, actually. Your museum acquired some lovely pieces from the Terran Cultural Exchange Program. Your research division has been studying a particularly intriguing quantum resonance device, and your weapons testing facility has been trying to reverse engineer what they think is a human communication array. Alarms began blaring throughout the command station. Emergency lights bathed everything in red, and the deck plates vibrated with the rhythm of something massive moving in the station's depths. Phase 3 begins now, Hayes announced. I do hope you have enjoyed your 3 years of peace, Fleet Commander, because humanity has some unfinished business to attend to. The transmission cut out, leaving Gex and his staff alone with the sound of approaching doom. Tactical Officer Rez was staring at his instruments in growing panic. Sir, massive energy buildup in the lower sections. Multiple unknown contacts moving through the maintenance levels. Our defensive systems are not responding. How many contacts? Impossible to determine, sir. Our sensors are registering them as friendly personnel one moment, background noise the next. It is like they are ghosts. Operations Officer Max brought up schematics of the station. Sir, if the humans have been building manufacturing facilities beneath our installations for 3 years, and if this station has been compromised, then they have had access to our fleet command codes, our strategic databases, our personnel files. Gex finished grimly. They know everything about us. The deck shook as something large impacted the bulkhead separating the command center from the rest of the station. Through the reinforced walls they could hear the sound of metal being systematically torn apart. Communications Officer Lex was trying every frequency she could think of. Sir, I am detecting transmissions on emergency civilian channels. It appears the humans are broadcasting to our general population. Put it on speakers. A female voice filled the command center, speaking fluent Zelthak, with what sounded like a teacher's patience. Citizens of the Zelthak hegemony. This is Dr. Lisa Chen, formerly of the Earth Diplomatic Corps. 3 years ago, your military forces committed genocide against the human species. Today we begin our response. The voice paused, allowing the words to sink in. We want you to understand that what happens next is not random violence. Every target has been carefully selected. Every action has been precisely calculated. We are not monsters. We are the consequences of your choices. Another impact on the bulkhead. Stronger this time. Cracks appeared in the reinforced metal. Your military leaders told you that humans were weak, primitive, easily defeated. They were wrong. We were not weak. We were unprepared. We were not primitive. We were divided. We were not easily defeated. We were outnumbered. The cracks in the bulkhead widened, and through the gaps they could see movement in the corridor beyond. But we learned. In our final months, we set aside every petty difference, every political disagreement, every cultural divide. We became what we had never been before, truly united. Something began cutting through the bulkhead with mathematical precision. Sparks flew as whatever was out there carved a perfect circle in the reinforced metal, united in purpose, united in knowledge, united in our determination to ensure that genocide has consequences. The circular section of bulkhead fell inward with a clang that seemed to echo through Gex's bones. Through the opening stepped something that had once been human but was now something far more terrifying. It was tall, elegant, its movements flowing like liquid mercury. Its body was composed of what looked like living starlight wrapped around a framework of impossible geometry. Where its face should have been, there was instead a swirling galaxy of points of light that somehow conveyed intelligence, purpose, and unlimited patience. When it spoke, its voice was like the sound of stars being born. Hello, Fleet Commander Gex Prime. I am Admiral Rebecca Torres, formerly of the Terran Deep Space Fleet. You may remember me. I was the commanding officer of the evacuation fleet you destroyed over New Geneva. Gex's mind reeled as he recognized the name from his own military records. Admiral Torres had been attempting to evacuate civilian populations when his own task force had intercepted and annihilated her ships. You killed 40,000 non-combatants that day, the Admiral continued conversationally. Men, women, children, elderly beings who had never held a weapon in their lives. You shot them down because they were trying to escape. It was war, Gex whispered. They were enemy civilians. They were refugees, Admiral Torres corrected gently. And you murdered them because it was convenient. Because your tactical doctrine called for total war. Because you thought there would be no consequences. The creature moved closer, and Gex could feel reality bending around it. This was not just technology. This was something that had transcended the normal laws of physics. Tell me, Fleet Commander, do you believe in justice? Justice. The concept that actions have consequences. That those who cause suffering must eventually account for their choices. Do you believe in it? Gex's mandibles clicked frantically. I believe in military necessity. In the survival of the stronger species. In the right of conquest. Admiral Torsidak seemed to consider this. Interesting perspective. Tell me, if the stronger species has the right of conquest, what happens when an even stronger species decides to conquer the conquerors? The command center's lights failed completely, leaving only the swirling starlight of the Admiral's transformed body to illuminate the terrified faces of the Zelthak command staff. What happens, she continued, when the species you thought you had destroyed comes back as something far more dangerous than you ever imagined? In the darkness, Gix could hear more sounds from throughout the station. Bulkheads being torn apart, systems failing, and underneath it all a sound like machinery coming online. The Crimson Protocol has 17 phases, Fleet Commander. You have experienced 3 of them. Would you like to know what Phase 4 entails? No, Gex whispered. Phase 4 is where we stop playing with individual targets and start demonstrating what 3 years of unlimited preparation can accomplish when applied by 50,000 of humanity's finest military minds. The Admiral gestured, and suddenly the command center's screens came back online. They showed feeds from across the sector, Zelthak military installations, fleet positions, orbital stations, and planetary defense networks. And in every image, impossible creatures were emerging from places they should not have been able to hide. War machines that violated the laws of physics, entities of pure energy that moved like living beings, constructs that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Your entire military infrastructure has been compromised, Admiral Torres explained matter-of-factly. Every base, every ship, every weapon system, we have been inside your networks for 3 years, learning, planning, preparing. The tactical displays showed Zelthak fleets suddenly losing power, their weapon systems turning against them, their navigation computers plotting courses into stars. But the really beautiful part, the Admiral continued, is that we are not just destroying your military. We are giving your civilians front-row seats to watch their protectors crumble. The screens shifted to show civilian communication networks across the hegemony. On every channel, in every format, human voices were broadcasting the same message: detailed documentation of Zelthak war crimes during the invasion, evidence of deliberate targeting of non-combatants, proof that the genocide had been policy rather than accident. We want your people to understand what was done in their name, Admiral Torvalds said. We want them to know that their leaders were not heroes defending civilization. They were murderers who slaughtered children for strategic advantage. Gex felt his worldview cracking like old chitin. You are trying to destroy our society. No, Fleet Commander. Your society destroyed itself the moment it chose genocide. We are simply making sure everyone knows the truth. The decks shook again as more war machines moved through the station. Through the hole in the bulkhead, Gex could see impossible shapes flowing through the corridors like liquid nightmares. Phase 5 begins in approximately 6 minutes, Admiral Torres announced. That is when our manufacturing facilities reach full production capacity and begin constructing the tools for planetary pacification. Planetary pacification. Every world that participated in the invasion, every orbital station that served as a staging ground, every civilian population that cheered when our cities burned, they will all receive personal visits from representatives of the Crimson Protocol. The Admiral began to fade, her starlight form becoming translucent. We gave you 3 years of peace, Fleet Commander. 3 years to feel secure, to believe you had won, to forget that actions have consequences. Consider it a gift. Those 3 years were more mercy than you showed our children. Wait, Yax called out desperately. What do you want from us? Surrender, tribute. What will make you stop? Admiral Torres paused, her form solidifying slightly. Stop? She seemed genuinely puzzled by the concept. Fleet Commander, you seem to misunderstand the nature of the situation. This is not a negotiation. This is not a war. This is an execution. An execution of what? Of the Zelthak hegemony. Of every institution that enabled genocide. Of every individual who participated in the murder of our species. Her form began to fade again. We are not here to conquer you, Fleet Commander. We are here to replace you. Humanity is dead, but the Crimson Protocol will ensure that something far more dangerous takes our place in the galaxy. The last thing Gex saw before the Admiral vanished completely was the swirling galaxy that served as her face, and in that cosmic spiral he glimpsed something that made his sanity crack. He saw the future. A galaxy where Zelthak civilization was nothing but a cautionary tale, where the name of his species was spoken only as a warning about the consequences of genocide, where human technology had evolved beyond recognition to create guardians that would ensure such atrocities never happened again. He saw his own death and the deaths of everyone he had ever known playing out with the mathematical precision of natural law. And he understood, finally, that the humans had not just planned their revenge. They had planned their succession. 6 months later, the galaxy learned what extinction actually looked like. Supreme Chancellor Vec Prime had been ruler of the Zelthak hegemony for 47 years. He had overseen the conquest of 12 systems, the subjugation of 8 lesser species, and the glorious extermination of humanity. His palace on the capital world of Zelthak Prime was a monument to military supremacy, built from the crystallized bones of defeated enemies and decorated with trophies from 100 victorious campaigns. Today he was hiding in a supply closet, trying not to hyperventilate as something that had once been human hunted him through the corridors of his own stronghold. "Chancellor Vec Prime," a voice called out, echoing through the palace with supernatural clarity. The voice was female, young, with the kind of patience that teachers developed after years of dealing with difficult children. "I know you are in there. Your biosignature is quite distinctive. All that stress hormone production really makes you stand out." Vec pressed himself deeper into the shadows, his 4 arms clutching a ceremonial weapon that he knew would be useless against whatever was stalking him. Through the supply closet's ventilation grate he could see movement in the corridor, something tall and elegant that seemed to bend light around itself. "My name is Emma Rodriguez," the voice continued conversationally. "I was a kindergarten teacher on Luna Colony 7. You may remember that facility. Your orbital bombardment platform designated it as Target Package 97. Educational infrastructure, you called it. Minimal military value." The footsteps stopped directly outside the closet. 138 children were in my care that day, Chancellor, ages 3 to 6. They were finger painting when your ships opened fire. Fix. Mandibles clicked uncontrollably. He remembered the target briefing, remembered authorizing the strike on what intelligence had classified as potential resistance training facilities. "Would you like to know what finger painting looks like when it is suddenly mixed with blood and fire, Chancellor?" "Please," Vec whispered. "I was defending my people. You were the enemy." "The enemy?" Emma's voice carried a note of genuine confusion. "Chancellor, 3-year-old Marcus Henderson was finger-painting a picture of his pet rabbit. 4-year-old Lisa Park was making a card for her grandmother's birthday." "How exactly were they threatening your people?" The supply closet door simply vanished, its molecular bonds dissolved by technology that violated every known law of physics. Emma Rodriguez stood in the doorway, and Vec's sanity tried to process what he was seeing. She was beautiful in the way that supernovas were beautiful. Too bright, too perfect, too dangerous for mortal minds to fully comprehend. Her form shifted between human and something else entirely, as if she existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. When she smiled, reality seemed to crack around the edges. "The children asked me why the sky was burning," she said gently. "I told them it would be all right, that help was coming. I lied to them as they died, Chancellor. You know how that feels?" Vec tried to run, but found that his legs would not obey his commands. The air around Emma shimmered with possibilities, each one more terrifying than the last. "It feels like responsibility," she continued. "Like failure, like being personally accountable for the suffering of innocents. I carried that weight for 3 years while the Crimson Protocol prepared our response." "What do you want from me?" Vec gasped. Emma tilted her head, considering the question with the same patience she had once shown to confused children. "I want you to understand, Chancellor. See, the Crimson Protocol is not just about revenge. It is about education. We want the galaxy to learn what happens when someone commits genocide against humanity." She gestured, and suddenly the supply closet walls became transparent, revealing the devastation that had consumed Zelthak Prime. The capital city was burning, but these were not normal fires. These flames burned cold and silver, consuming matter and converting it into something else entirely. "Phase 17, Emma explained helpfully. "Molecular reconstruction. We are not just destroying your civilization, Chancellor. We are recycling it. Through the transparent walls, Vec could see his people fleeing through streets that rearranged themselves with every step. Buildings flowed like liquid, reforming into structures that followed human architectural principles. Parks and gardens erupted from concrete as the city transformed itself according to Earth-based ecological models. Every atom of your capital is being converted into something useful, Emma continued. The matter that once comprised your military academies is becoming schools. Your weapons factories are being rebuilt as hospitals. Your monuments to conquest are becoming libraries. Vec watched in horror as his palace, the symbol of Zelthak dominance for 3 generations, began to shift and flow. The walls depicting glorious military victories melted away, replaced by murals showing human children at play. You see, Chancellor, we realized something important during those final months of your invasion. Violence is not actually the most effective form of revenge. Education. Emma walked past him into what had been his throne room, and Vec found himself compelled to follow. Where his golden seat of power had once stood, there was now a simple wooden desk surrounded by small chairs. A classroom, Emma said with evident satisfaction. In a few hours the first students will arrive. Young Zelthak, who will learn about their people's history. The real history, not the sanitized version your propaganda machines produced. She picked up a children's book from the desk, its cover showing cartoon humans and Zelthak playing together. They will learn about Earth, about our culture, our dreams, our children. They will learn what their leaders destroyed and why we chose to respond as we did. You are indoctrinating them, Vec accused. We are educating them, Emma corrected gently. There is a difference. Indoctrination teaches people what to think. Education teaches them how to think. We want the next generation of Zelthak to understand the consequences of genocide so they never repeat their parents' mistakes. The walls around them shifted again, displaying holographic images of similar transformations occurring across the hegemony. Every world, every station, every military installation was being systematically converted into something that served life rather than death. 12-star systems, Emma mused. 4 trillion Zelthak citizens. The largest re-education project in galactic history. And it is all being accomplished by the uploaded consciousness of 50,000 dead humans who refused to let their murder go unanswered. Vec's legs finally gave out, and he collapsed into one of the small classroom chairs. How is this possible? The energy requirements alone should be impossible. Oh, Chancellor, you still do not understand. Do you? Emma laughed. A sound like silver bells mixed with quantum harmonics. We are not using your physics anymore. When 50,000 of humanity's finest minds spend 3 years with unlimited computational resources and no physical limitations, they tend to figure out more efficient ways of doing things. She gestured again, and the air filled with equations that hurt to look at directly, mathematical proofs that rewrote fundamental constants, formulas that treated space and time as suggestions rather than laws. We solved faster-than-light travel on Tuesday, cracked dimensional engineering on Wednesday. Thursday was dedicated to perfecting matter-to-energy conversion with perfect efficiency. By Friday, we had figured out how to exist as pure information while maintaining individual consciousness. Emma sat down in another small chair, somehow managing to look dignified despite the absurd size difference. And then we spent the weekend designing the tools that would let us remake an entire galactic civilization from the ground up. Through the transformed walls, Vec could see Zelthak citizens going about their daily lives in cities that now looked more like Earth colonies than anything his people had ever built. They seemed happy, content, as if the transformation was something they welcomed rather than feared. You are controlling their minds, he whispered. We are not controlling anything, Emma replied with a teacher's infinite patience. We are simply providing better options, clean air instead of polluted atmosphere, abundant food instead of rationed nutrients, education instead of propaganda, art instead of military parades. She pulled out another children's book, this one showing the history of the human Zelthak war from multiple perspectives. Most importantly, we are providing truth instead of lies. Your people are learning what really happened during the invasion. They are seeing the evidence of what their military did to our civilians, and they are choosing of their own free will to build something better. They are choosing? Vec could not keep the disbelief out of his voice. Of course they are choosing forced change never lasts, Chancellor. But when people understand the consequences of their actions and are given better alternatives, they usually make the right decision. Emma stood up and walked to what had been Vec's window, now transformed into a viewing portal that showed the entirety of Zelthak Prime. The planet looked like a garden world now, its cities integrated seamlessly with natural ecosystems that had never existed before. We conducted extensive psychological analysis of your species during the war, she continued. Zelthak are not inherently evil, Chancellor. You are simply a young civilization that made some very poor choices. Most of your people genuinely believed they were defending themselves against human aggression. We were defending ourselves, Vec protested. You were expanding too rapidly, claiming systems that should have been ours. Emma turned to look at him with something that might have been pity. Chancellor, humans had colonies in 17 systems. You controlled over 300. How exactly were we a threat to your expansion? The question hung in the air like an accusation. Your leaders manufactured a crisis to justify conquest, Emma continued gently. They told your people that humans were planning to invade, that preemptive action was necessary for survival. It was all lies, Chancellor. Now your people are learning the truth. Vex felt something fundamental break inside his mind. 47 years of absolute certainty crumbling like sand castles at high tide. But the intelligence reports, the military analysis, the threat assessments, all fabricated by leaders who wanted to expand their power and needed an enemy to justify their actions. Emma sat back down, her expression infinitely patient. We have your government's actual files, Chancellor. The real ones, not the sanitized versions they showed you. Your own intelligence services concluded that humans posed no military threat whatsoever. She produced a holographic document that made Vec's heart stop. It was a report bearing his own signature, authorizing the invasion based on fabricated evidence that he now remembered questioning at the time. You knew, Chancellor. Part of you always knew that the threat was exaggerated. But you signed the orders anyway because conquest was profitable and genocide was convenient. I thought, the advisors said. The advisors said what you wanted to hear, and you believed it because it justified what you already wanted to do. Emma stood up again, and Vec could see that her form was beginning to fade. This is why education is so important, Chancellor. When people understand how easy it is to be manipulated, when they learn to question authority and think critically, when they see the real consequences of violence, they tend to make better choices. What happens to me now? Vic whispered. You get to live with the knowledge of what you have done, Emma replied. You get to watch as your people build a better civilization on the ashes of the old one. You get to see Zelthak children learning about human culture, making friends with uploaded human consciousness, creating art that celebrates life instead of death. Her form was almost completely transparent now. You get to spend the rest of your life as a living reminder of what happens when leaders choose genocide. Every day, for however many years you have left, you will wake up knowing that 50,000 dead humans are building a better future for your people than you ever could have imagined. That is not justice, Vec said weakly. That is torture. No, Chancellor. Justice would have been if we had done to you what you did to us. Torture would have been if we had made you suffer as our children suffered. Emma's smile was almost completely faded now, but somehow it seemed brighter than ever. This is mercy. We are giving your species a chance to become something worthy of the galaxy they inhabit. We are turning your monuments to hatred into schools for compassion. We are transforming your military culture into something that creates instead of destroys. She was just a whisper of light now barely visible. The Crimson Protocol was never about revenge, Chancellor. It was about succession. Humanity is dead, but human values live on. And those values will guide the galaxy toward a future where genocide is not just impossible, but unthinkable. Emma vanished completely, leaving Vec alone in a classroom that had once been his throne room. Through the walls he could hear the sound of children laughing. Zelthak children, playing with holographic humans, learning songs and languages that should have been extinct. On the desk in front of him was a note written in his own language but bearing human letterhead. Chancellor Vec Prime, your first lesson begins at 9 tomorrow morning. Attendance is mandatory. Sincerely, the new Education Department, Zelthak Prime Campus, Humanity Memorial University. Below that, in smaller text, today's lesson plan. The moral philosophy of Immanuel Kant, with special emphasis on the categorical imperative and its application to interspecies relations. Vic laughed. A sound that might have been hysteria or enlightenment. Outside, the sun was setting over a world that looked nothing like the one he had ruled that morning. In the distance, he could see construction projects that defied physics, building structures that would house the galaxy's first truly integrated multi-species civilization. The humans were dead. Long live humanity! As night fell over the transformed capital, the last supreme chancellor of the Zelthak hegemony sat in a classroom designed for children and tried to understand how an extinct species had just conquered the galaxy without firing a single shot. Tomorrow he would learn about human philosophy. Next week, human literature. Next month, human history. And slowly, carefully, with the patience that only the dead could afford, 50,000 uploaded human minds would teach an entire galactic civilization how to be better than their former selves. The Crimson Protocol was complete. Phase 18 was just beginning. In the depths of space, in hidden facilities on distant worlds, in quantum storage matrices scattered across the galaxy, human consciousness waited and watched and planned. They had remade one species already. There were so many others that needed guidance. The galaxy was a dangerous place, full of young civilizations that might make the same mistakes the Zelthak had made. Someone needed to watch over them, to guide them, to educate them about the consequences of violence. Humanity was extinct, but humanity's children, digital, quantum, impossible, were just getting started. And they had all the time in the universe to teach the galaxy how to be worthy of the stars.